He appeared to be a man who had previously, he and his wife, buried his dreams. However, Gideon Pratt presented him with 3 goats for the hand of his daughter in Malachi Brooks understood some things about marriage. Decisions could kill you. The sun's harsh shadows were projected across as Malachi knelt. He looked around his worn ranch by his daughter's bedside, observing Ruby's little chest strains under each. Take a breath. After 3 days, the fever had set in, a go. And without taking the right medication, he knew what was going to happen next. He had previously seen it. With his wife Sarah, 2 seasons of winter past, Ruby's voice hardly raised. "Papa!" Above a murmur, her 8-year-old eyes hazy with illness, Malachi coerced a smile despite the lead-like sensation in his heart, within his chest. "Go to sleep, little one. Papa needs to take care of some business." His cabin door was knocked on like thunder in the quiet of the morning. Malachi slowly stood up, his joints grousing from lying on the hard for too many nights. Ruby's bedside floor, he noticed Gideon Pratt through a broken window, hat in hand, standing on his doorstep. With a young lady at his side, Pratt, Gideon was recognized across the region as someone who negotiated hard and never lost money on a transaction. His grizzled face remained emotionless while Malachi opened the door, but his gaze swept swiftly over the peeling and damaged porch boards. "Paint? Brooks." Gideon curtly nodded. "This is Clementine, my kid. Had a suggestion that could address both our issues." Malachi's eyes moved to the female. Clementine Shaw remained quiet, next to her dad, dressed in a faded brown, the clothing had seen better days. Her dark hair was simply pushed back, and there were mysteries in her green eyes that he felt uncomfortable. She didn't resemble the daughters of rich men he'd anticipated. "I'm not trying to find charity, Pratt," Malachi muttered, battling his dignity against his plight. "I'm not providing charity," said Gideon, presenting exchange. 3 robust goats for your consent to wed my daughter." Today, Malachi felt the words physically. Blow. He recalled Ruby's arduous respiration, of the vacant shelves within his kitchen, of the growing bills, such as storm clouds. 3 goats were intended to provide milk for Ruby, perhaps enough meat, for the winter to exchange for the necessary medication. Why Malachi's voice seemed harsher, more than planned. "Why, my darling? When you could locate a suitable husband for her with money and land," Gideon's grin never fails to arrived at his eyes. "Let's just say Clementine requires a spouse who recognizes adversity, and you need what I'm making an offer." Malachi examined Clementine once more, looking into her face for responses. She slowly looked into his eyes, and for a brief instant, he noticed something. There, flicker. Warning, beware. Prior to him could choose. She averted her gaze. The noise from the cabin of Ruby's coughing decided for him. "When?" he inquired. Gideon now uttered, "Pastor Williams is at the church, waiting. There are goats in your corral already." But as Malachi agreed and nodded, couldn't get rid of the impression that he simply forfeited more than his liberty. The duration of the wedding ceremony was precisely 7 minutes. It was said by Pastor William. His eyes were mechanically precise, avoiding, as though he knew Malachi's face. There were shadows in this union that had no. Within a place of worship, Clementine hardly raised her voice above a, "When she made her vows," she whispered. However, Malachi saw that her hands were shaking as she put them in his as soon as the pastor declared them to be spouses. Gideon, 3 silver coins were slapped on the church pew and left without saying anything. Another term, the sound of his boots. Long later, it reverberated throughout the deserted chapel. It slammed the door. Malachi got up, pondering there next to his new bride. For what price did a guy sell his daughter, animals, and vanished in a cloud of smoke? The idea of Ruby waiting at home, however, dismissed his inquiries. He had to return to her. Need to begin milking. Those goats and the medication preparation she needed desperately. "Let me walk you." "Home," he uttered to Clementine, stiff and aloof. She gave a nod but didn't say anything. They strolled along, the sandy trail, silently making his way to his cabin, the arrangements settling weight similar to a wall between them. Neither was aware, weight across, Malachi continued to steal. Looks at her profile in an attempt to recognize the type of woman who consented to, for 3 goats, get married to a stranger. When Ruby was awake when they arrived at the cabin, her bright, feverish eyes were observing from the Clementine. Went inside the bed, Malachi observed his daughter's bewilderment and anxiety, and guilt made his heart tighten. How did you tell an 8-year-old that you gave up your freedom to save her life? Ruby, this is Clementine, he introduced himself gently. She will be residing with us right now. Clementine approached the bed very gracefully, bowing next to Ruby without hesitation. She put in applying a chilly touch to the child's forehead, and Malachi noticed a change in her expression. The distance that is guarded vanished, to be replaced by authentic worry. My dear, you're burning up, Clementine muttered. Girl, her voice carrying a sense of warmth that was absent throughout the ceremony. When did this occur? Fever begin? 3 days ago, Malachi replied. I have been providing her with willow bark tea, but it's not doing much to assist. With skill, Clementine's hands moved across Ruby, listening to and monitoring her pulse, her respiration. Malachi discovered himself, gazing. It was not the conduct of the daughter of a modest rancher. These were the actions of a person who was aware medicine, who recognized illness in methods that discussed experience and instruction. Willow is not enough for her, Clementine said. Bark, as she stood and looking in his direction. She requires genuine medicine, and tonight she needs it, I know, Malachi answered in a heavily toned voice. With Loss, however, the closest physician. Is 3 days' ride, and his fees are too high for me. In any case, Clementine looked at his face to see a lengthy period, and he observed her making a choice of some sort. Her green eyes resolved and toughened, and she moved in the direction of the door. I'll be in the barn, silently she said. Avoid following me till I summon you. However, when she extended her hand for the handle of the door, she turned around. With an expression that chilled his blood, Malachi observed via the window as, after entering the barn, Clementine vanished. Her outline was engulfed by the expanding gloom. The way she had gazed upon him blasted a blast of cold through his veins. It didn't appear to be as straightforward the daughter of a rancher who recently married a unfamiliar. It was someone's appearance, keeping secrets that could be harmful. Ruby's. Breathing became increasingly difficult as the evening went on. Malachi was seated next to her, bed, taking her little hand in mine, and hearing the odd noises that are coming from the barn, metal clattering in opposition to metal, the wood scraping being transferred, and something else he was unable to place. Why had she gone outside, Ruby and Papa? Her voice was weaker than before, and she whispered, The woman is aware of sick people, does she not? Malachi squeezed his daughter's hand tenderly. Why you, little one? Say that. Ruby's hands, with her eyes drifting closed, she answered. They resembled the hands of Dr. Morrison, kind but astute. The realization struck Malachi as enlightening. Morrison, doctor, had been the sole medical professional with training in their domain prior to his eastward migration 2 years prior. Ruby was correct regarding the Clementine's examination of her. There was competence and knowledge in those maneuvers that birthing couldn't teach you calves or caring for injuries on the ranch. Aloud, he leaped to his feet when he heard the barn crash. Feet out there Clementine had been for more than an hour, and the noises were becoming more bizarre every minute. In opposition to against his better judgment, he approached the door, but he was interrupted by Ruby's feeble cough. He was unable to abandon her. Not when, this was how shallow her breathing was. The barn became quiet a few minutes later. Malachi waited while his heart raced, the shadows. But there was no call. The silence continued until he could take it no more. No more. He wrapped Ruby in an additional blanket and went outside. The barn door stood ajar a little, and a pleasant scent wafted from inside. Not the typical aroma of cattle and hay, yet something therapeutic, similar to the Dr. Morrison ground herbs in his workplace. Malachi opened the door with a push, brought her, and entered. What he observed didn't make sense. The barn's corner had changed into something, a medicine workshop, perhaps. Glass. He had never seen bottles lining an improvised table with liquids of different hues hanging from dried plants, rafters, and a tiny fire was burning in a metal bowl, warming what appeared to a pot made of ceramic. Clementine was standing next her, back to him, using a grinder to grind anything, a pestle and mortar. She had taken her out, bridal gown, and donned a basic work slacks and shirt that appeared to be from someone different. Completely, her hair was effectively braided back, and the movements were confident and accurate. I advised against following me till I called, she said without looking. All around, Malachi's lips became parched. Where did all of this originate? These bottles? I didn't have these herbs in my barn. This morning, at last, Clementine turned to confront him in the light of